Okay, so hello Facebook. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. I had my Streamlabs die on me yesterday, so I've changed over to OBS. Hopefully everything is working. I had to try and transfer across all the scenes and everything. So as you can see, I'm just using crappy iPhone headphones for now because it's the only microphone that I got working. I recently acquired a really nice microphone that I've been using to sample a whole lot of stuff on, a nice AKG XL2, which is what I'll be showing you some of the samples that I've been creating with that, and some sampling techniques I can talk about with Push, and a couple of tricks on how you can get the most out of your sample packs if you use samples. So, get started, I might just show you a couple of techniques with Simpler and Sampler about chopping up samples. If you already have long samples, like a song or something, you can chop them up really easily, and a couple of tricks that you can do to mix them around with different songs. So I've taken a sample from a choir, and I'm just going to show you. I think you can see across over here, hopefully. Just comment in the stream if there's any problems, if you can't hear me, if you can not hear the music. I've tested most things, but you should be able to hear both me and the computer. So over here we've got a big sample of a choir. It's called the Hilliard Ensemble, and it's I think it's like a Renaissance choir, very, very old classical style music. And what I've done is I've chopped it up into different parts on the Push. So if I might just go through and show you how to do that. In the browser, if I wanted to just explain how to do that, I'm going to create a new track. You can do this with any tracks. It's a very simple thing to do and very fast now with Ableton's Simpler Slicer, but I actually prefer to do it with a drum rack. So for example, here's my sample that I want to do. It's a long sample. I'm going to right click on the sample, and I want to, well, there's two ways. I can either put it in to a simpler, which is a really simple way to do it, and very fast, but it's not as custom as what I want to actually do. I'm just going to quickly show you the simple way and then the hard way. So let's grab a simpler. I'm going to create a new track, grab a simpler. So here's my simpler in the track. And what I can just do is grab this and chuck it into my simpler track. So there I have it now in my simpler track. So if I solo my simpler track, starts very slowly. Very slow song. So hopefully you can hear that. There's the beginning of the Hilliard Ensemble 4 voices. So what I want to do now is just turn it into slice. This is really easy. We can just click slice. And now, as you can see on the Push, it's all sliced it into different bits. Now to change the sensitivity, we can change here and it will slice it up differently. You can see that those blue lines changing on down on the simpler. But this will now change if I change the sensitivity. It usually spreads it more across the sample. So you can get lots of really creative ideas from slicing up different things really quickly like that. Now, I really like that. That's an awesome feature. But sometimes you want it to be specifically sliced, for example, on the beat, or specifically 4 beats and 4 beats or whatever. So what we can do then is we need to warp this. Click warp. And then we're going to slice it to drum rack. So this allows us, here we go, slice to new MIDI track. Okay. So just next to the convert buttons, we're going to click slice to new MIDI track. And then it will ask us how it wants us to slice it. Now, before Simpler could do this, this is how I used to do this function, because Simpler didn't do this, I think, until 10 or maybe 9. Anyway, I started with Ableton 8, so back in the day. Create 1 slice per bar. Now, this is generally good for a long sample because you can choose and then you can customize it yourself. That will say it will result in 210 slices, so actually you need to make it smaller. So there's only, because of MIDI limitations, there's only 128 slices. So we need to make it smaller. So what I can just do is I can just cut this in half, and let's just go slice to new MIDI track. We'll go bar. Well, there's 100 slices now. Okay, great. Let's see how it does. It will now slice it up bar by bar, even though I haven't technically warped it. You need to turn warp on so that it thinks it's warped at least. Okay, now down the bottom here, I've got my warped and sliced choir. Let's have a look. So you've noticed as well, it's just put it in MIDI and in order. So if I click play, it's going to play it in order, just how the sample will play. But we can then mix it up. So not sure if you can hear that very loudly, so what I'm just going to do is, usually when it slices a new sample, we might need to increase the volume. Really quick way to do that is to just grab the volume over here, zoom in, grab the volume over here, and to bring it up maybe to 1, and then you can click, where is it? Copy value to siblings. Super useful. It will copy it to all the other ones. Very good trick. So now they'll all be loud. I'll also make sure my accent is on the push, so they're playing at full velocity. You can notice there's a little pop at the start though, so I'm going to just change the attack because the attack is creating that pop. So if we're going to get picky, we really probably want to balance the volumes of all of those, and that's where we have a bit more control, and that's why I like this system, because I can go, okay, I don't like the start there, I want it to start a little here, or I want it to start later, for example. And this one's softer, for example, so I can adjust this one specifically to be louder, or I can turn the gain up. That one's softer as well. So again, I bring the gain up on that one. So we've got so much more control, and usually I just find that necessary. If I start with Simpler, it's great, it's fast, but this one, it gives us a whole lot more control. That's the main point of it. So slice to drum rack, that's how we do. Again, I'll just demonstrate here, and then slice to new MIDI track. It has to be warped. There are many different types of slicing as well though. So if you want to try it again, there are different slicing presets. I'm not sure if anyone's used these. You can, of course, change slice to bar or half note if you want really short slices, of course. But slicing presets, there's a whole bunch of different presets, and they often come with effects that are built in. So, I mean, even if we just try Slicer Dicer, let's try this one. And I'm going to click OK, and we'll see if it does anything different. Usually we'll just do the slicing in the same way, but add a couple of extra things. I'm just going to name this one Slicer Dicer. See what it does. Yeah, so it does have a whole bunch of different effects. So we have a look here, we've got an arpeggiator, a note length, we've got then the slice, redux, dynamic tube, and a gate. So then we can hear. That's pretty cool. Saturate that in some reverb, and we'll get some. Yeah, I like that. So again, lots of different, I mean, it's just added effects and it's cut it up differently like with the arpeggiator, but there's so many things you can do with that little slicing technique. Now, when I used to experiment with this, I also have been making a lot of sample packs. So recently I made this sample pack called Sliced and Diced. You can see the project name up the top here. And Sliced and Diced was supposed to be a sample pack of chopped up samples from previous sample packs. So kind of like a compilation sample pack. So what I did is I took recordings that I'd done before, or even recordings that I'd recorded for other artists, and chopped them up into little parts, just like on Push sampler here. And then I tried to rework them into new compositions or new loops. And when I did this, I came across a new technique that I hadn't thought of before, which was basically you can then move the MIDI to another type of sample track, and it will create a totally different sound with the same MIDI notes. Now, we can't usually do that when we just move samples around. So that's where moving samples into MIDI, we have so much more. And this actually sped up my process for creating this sample pack 3 times faster, because I just created one set of MIDI and I copied it to 3 different drum racks of MIDI samples. Boom, we have 30 samples, for example, if I did 10 different MIDIs. I'll show you. So, for example, here I've got some like one-shots in MIDI of, I think it's vocals. Wrong. So these are some of the vocals. I think they were auto-tuned and pitched and stuff, etc. What I did with those is then you can move them into another drum rack and they'll create a different sound. The best example is actually kind of over here. So I might actually start over here, this one. That's like a female vocal that I've chopped up into different parts. And if we look at the MIDI, you can see the MIDI is here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that into a different drum rack that I've sliced up with saxophone samples, for example. Now you can, obviously, I created these samples, I recorded them myself, but you could do this with your own sample packs and create your own drum racks, and then you'd have multiple variations on similar things. So I'm going to show you now, I just dragged that MIDI into the saxophone sample rack. And so same MIDI, created a totally different thing. So this is the MIDI before, this is the MIDI after. And I also did it with flute, the same MIDI again. Now obviously some of them work better for different instruments and others. There were long notes on the vocals and that worked for the vocals, but I think they were too long for the flute, for example. Let's have a look at another one. I might give this one. For example, I can see this one's green here. Great, so same thing. I think it's too fast. 120. Tempo here is 120. Strange. So if you've got sample packs and you've only used them one way, this is a really good way to like expand your use of them. I didn't use sample packs much myself before, and I still don't much because I prefer to create chords and stuff all myself. But sometimes, well, particularly for drums, I really like drum sounds in sample packs, even if I'll chop them up and use those drums in their own way. But sample packs, I think, get frowned on in production, but they don't need to be. You can still be very creative with sample packs, and there's many ways to be creative. I mean, just look at how Daft Punk uses sample packs, or samples, should I say. And you can't tell me that it's not creative. There are many producers out there that do very creative things with their samples. So yeah, please experiment with your samples though. If you just use the sample how it's done, I find that quite boring. So there's so many ways in Ableton to do that. As I said before, you know, slicing it up and changing the direction and organization of it. And here again, you can create your own drum racks of samples. So I might just demonstrate how you could do that if you have just separate samples. So first you need to create a drum rack. I'm going to create a drum rack here. And I'm going to grab some of the samples from my sample pack, okay? So I might just start with just have a listen. I'm just going to play a couple. Yeah, I'm just going to grab some of the effects samples from the sliced and diced pack I made recently. I'm going to chuck them in this MIDI drum rack, and we'll see if we can then change it across to another drum rack. So here's my drum rack. I'm going to grab a bunch of effects here. Here's my samples. Boom. And I'm only going to put 6 or 7 in. And then I'm going to create another drum rack and have it from a drum rack from a different sample pack, for example. Or maybe I'll just do the flutes. That's what I'll do. Okay, so here's my second drum rack. I'm going to grab whatever samples of flutes and drag them in. Again, you can drag in lots of samples at once. Don't just have to do 8, you can do lots and lots of them. So here my samples are loaded up on the flute rack, and here the samples are loaded up on the drum rack for the effects. Let's just test some of them out. I'm going to just solo this. Cool. So what I can now do is I could record a MIDI part on this one and transpose it across, or take it across to the next one and see if it works. And then you create lots of ideas in one go. Just if you're creating one rhythm, test it out on different sample packs, I suppose. It's a way to transpose and move it across different keys, different types of styles, and it can be really, really quick and makes it a lot faster to compose with some of those things. So I don't see if there's any comments or anything. I'm not entirely sure that the live stream is working. I hope it's one slice per. I actually have no idea if it is working or not because I can't really figure out how Facebook works. But I'll be putting this and recording this and putting this up on YouTube if that's easier for you. I've just done Facebook because I thought it would be easier. I thought it'd be less set up because we were previously with Restream, and then Restream has been annoying to work with OBS, so I've just moved on. I might move on to the second point, which was talking about sound design. And let me know if there's any questions in the chat. I don't know if you can comment or how does it work on Facebook, but I guess you can comment on the post or whatever. Okay, so that's a quick little trick for sampling. I'm going to have a look now at sound design with Operator. And someone also wanted to talk about percussion. So, sound design with Operator. Operator is my favorite synth in Ableton, actually. Wavetable's pretty good, but I still prefer Operator because I have more experience with it. So I'm just going to open up a new set and just talk about a couple of features that people don't necessarily always use with Operator. Aha, it is working. Thank you, Elisari Al. I'm glad to hear it's working. Yes, sorry, the system's totally new to me, so yeah, I'm using OBS, which is not the streaming software I usually use. Streamlabs decided to update itself and then crashed and crashed and crashed and crashed. So yesterday, I created this entire new scene for OBS and had to really try and remember how this stuff worked. But I'm glad to hear it's working. Thank you. Okay, so here's my template track. I'm just going to grab an operator and I'll chuck operator in. So I'm going to just zoom up on operator so we can see it a bit here. I had complaints before that my screen was too big to see clearly. I'm sorry, but it's very clear for me. So operator, it looks a bit ugly, I must say, compared to a lot of the modern synths, but I find operator really powerful. And I think it's a very misunderstood synthesizer. I think it's probably to do with the fact that it doesn't seem very logical for some people. You know, they've got these hidden away envelope and oscillator pages, and then you really have to click to get to the different oscillators. Kind of not as visual as many of the other more modern synths, but still I find Operator my go-to synth. A couple of recommendations for Operator and sound designing in Operator. It automatically kind of starts in either this one or this algorithm. Wouldn't recommend you start with that. I recommend starting with this one because it means each oscillator, A, B, C, and D, these represent our different oscillators. So if you start with this one, it means each one is feeding into it in series. And we probably don't want that. So at the very beginning, while we're designing the sound, I don't really want that to be like that because I want to hear each oscillator separately. So if you want to hear each oscillator separately, click on this part here. That means A, B, C, and D will all send their signals separately, as you can see there. Yeah? The different ones, you know, for example, D is feeding into C. This one is D feeding into C as well, and B into A, for example. We can experiment with them later, but let's just start with these ones. Do slow me down if you do have any comments throughout. Just write a message. I can see so far a couple of messages, so that's working. But yeah, if you have a message or a question while I'm going, just stop me. So with the oscillators course, this represents which octave it is in. I mean, it's a little more complex than that because it's not just octave. It goes up what's called the harmonic series. So the harmonic series changes the intervals as we get higher. So it will be an octave, a fifth, another octave, and then a third, a fifth, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes higher. So as you can hear, if I go up, etc., it gets smaller intervals. Generally, I will keep one on the sub kind of sound or low sound, and then I might create another octave. I need to turn the volume up on this. This one's creating a fifth. I might not have a fifth. Anyway, what just happened there? Okay, so the thing I really want to talk about, I'm not going to go through all of what Operator does, but I'm going to go through one thing that I find super useful in creating kind of rhythmic feels within Operator. So I'm just going to grab the envelope. Why is the envelope not working? There we go, envelope. Just going to grab the envelope and talk about how this envelope works, because we both have envelope, amp envelope, and we also have filter envelope. So we have a couple of different envelopes we can do, just like in Serum. You've kind of got quite a lot of power here that you can do, but again, it's not as easy to see as how Serum does. So envelope here, if I just make it really simple, I'm going to make this envelope start later. Now, something that is not immediately noticeable is this loop function. We can make the envelope loop, and this can be really cool for creating rhythmic effects. So if I click beat and then I go I bring the decay down, you can see now it's creating this rhythm. Okay, let's try this with number B, and we're going to create a different rhythm. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to create a loop, grab beat. I'm going to create maybe do it eighth. Cool. So we've got 4, 4, and we've got eighth notes at the same time. Now, we could create this with a sequencer and have kind of different MIDI coming out of a sequencer, but we can do this all within Operator. So it can kind of create its own sequences, which is really cool. I'm not going to worry about the actual sounds at the moment yet because I want to get the rhythmic part first. I might try one more polyrhythm just to be annoying. So in C, I'm going to create this as a high one. I'm going to make it a fixed interval. I might make it a little... Oh, that'd be great if I could make this automated actually, but I'll do that later with an LFO tool. So it kind of goes a bit out of tune as it goes. I'm going to make that one at a different interval that's going to be like in threes. there. I'm going to go beat, and I'll make this time 6. That's pretty weird. It'd be great if we could like separate them onto left and right, but for the moment I'll just leave it like that. So now let's try and make them sound a little better, and I might just bring up resonance and filter down. So yeah, if you want to solo each one, you can hear each one individually. We've got this one. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 8th. 1, 2, da, 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 da. And we've got just plain beat. So we can create really interesting polyrhythms, and if you want to remove the straight beat, you totally can. So there are a couple of different functions, I think. Sync and loop. Loop can make it looped not to the beat. So it can be, I think if we just click loop here, it will ask for milliseconds. So if you want it to be like not synchronized to the beat, it can be really interesting, like creating phase problems and stuff. Yeah, we don't want that just yet. So that's a way to create like lots of rhythmic interest within just, I mean, that's just one note. We can create a chord, or for example, it's going to sound really weird for now, but we might want to simplify it. Might want to simplify it and make it, for example, this one is a different interval, so we might want to make it the octave. So now it's the same note, and if we play a chord, like a couple of effects on it. It's almost like we've got two synthesizers because we've got two oscillators working on different rhythms all together at the same time. So yeah, I think that's a really powerful function with an operator that a lot of people, I have not seen many people talk about, and I just wanted to say that's one really fun sound design thing to use. You can also do it with the filter. So I might just give another example of how to do it with the filter. I'm going to create another operator altogether. And this can be fun because you can create kind of like filter sweeps in rhythm. I'm going to grab another operator, create it here. This time I'm going to grab, I'll just do a saw. Okay, we got a 7th chord. What I just wanted to be able to do now is turn on the filter and make the filter close in rhythm. So I can do the same thing here, loop, and I'll do beat, and I'll do, let's just do fourths, 1 over 1 4. Okay, now I need to bring the filter down, and I need to create envelope. Great. So now we've got this envelope, this is opening and closing on the beat with our repeat, and the filter working. So now we can adjust the filter how we like. We want more resonance or less resonance. If we want a distortion PID filter, maybe add a bit of drive. I'm just getting very bored of that chord though. So still not sure I like that. So yeah, that's another way you can do it if you wanted to make it faster. You draw a custom envelope to make it more random. Yeah, you could. Let me just see how you can do that. To make the rhythm more random, to make the rhythm more random as well, you can trigger the notes at different times. So I'm just going to repeat. I'm going to put it back to fourths. If you trigger the notes at different times, it will obviously create different. To create more randomness, we could try and make the What it will still do though is it won't have random different rhythms. It will still be doing that loop at the set loop period that you choose down here. So the repeat will still be the same. If you want it to sound more random, what you might want to do is create, for example, another one that has, but with filter. No, you'd want to probably do it on the amp envelope and then just choose like loop, or have a different beat synchronization so that it has like what we had before, 1/4 and one is doing 1/6 and one is doing 1/8. On the filter, I don't think we can do multiples of that. I mean, we could do just loop and then like that. But if we try and do, for example, there's some good stuff going on. So I've put loop on the amp filter as well as the other filter, so they could they could interact, and sometimes they can cut each other out and create like stutter effects. But again, it's very experimental. Like you need to try it yourself and tweak it and see how it goes. But yeah, you can create more randomness. The other thing that you could add that is really fun is the Max for Live LFO tool. I just grab Max MIDI effect, LFO MIDI, yes. Slowly. If you add the LFO tool will now modulate any of these parameters. If you haven't used the LFO tool before, you can basically click map, and then I'm going to click map, and I'm going to map this to, for example, actually I don't want to map yet, I want to look on the filter page. For example, time. Yeah. I'm going to click map, I'm going to click time, and now it's going to be automating the time very fast, so we're going to turn the rate down a bit better. Now we see the time is changing. It's still pretty rapid. It's also too big, so we want the depth to be less. So I don't know if you can see that the time it's automating this loop to be huge. We want the depth to probably be less, and that will really help. And also offset it, so you're containing it to, for example, just the left side. You might want to do that. Let's just test it. Doesn't seem to be affecting it as much as I was expecting. But yeah, that's one way that you could get perhaps random, or you could have an envelope or some other Max device changing that loop time. I might just try it with beat and see. Now I have to redo the mapping, change the mapping here. That's cool. So again, we don't have to have a sine. We could have, for example, a triangle wave or a random wave, and then you'd have real random. Not a particularly nice sound, but I apologize. I'm not focusing on the sound. Actually, I'm talking about some of the specific functions. But yeah, that's a way you could pair it. I mean, that's the great thing about Ableton is, yeah. I hope that answered your question, Elisari. Hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah, so that's another way. You've got so much modular control in Ableton that there's always a way to create something. There's probably usually 4 or 5 ways to create something. So if it's not with an operator, yeah, you can just add in this LFO MIDI tool, and if you want it fully random, chuck in that random effect, and boom, you've got this crazy sound. I think I personally liked the rate is too high now. I personally liked the getting faster and getting slower kind of thing. So I might just try that again and see. So yeah, again, a lot of tweaking is going to be required for getting the rate and everything there. And sometimes, again, you could do this with just automation, and that might be easier to draw it in, because then you have full customization of it rather than having to toy around with, you know, an LFO device. So sometimes, again, it might be fun, might be a good way to get ideas, but then you might go, yeah, I want it to be specifically this, so I'm going to write it into the automation. Especially now that Ableton has so much new automation features, like you can really draw automation quite simply and complex. You know? Remember, we can draw curves and draw lines now. I won't probably talk about that yet. Okay, that's the two things that I wanted to cover. I don't want to cover big topics. Like last times I did some of the live streams, I felt like the topics were a bit too in-depth. Maybe you guys really enjoyed it, but I don't have time to prepare at the moment. We're doing online teaching, and a whole lot of the online teaching requires a lot of work. So I don't have a whole lot of time to prepare. I've been pretty distant for the last little 2 months. But I will share one other tip with you, which is about how to use percussion to improve your drums. I think a lot of people overlook percussion, especially like world music percussion. I particularly like Latin percussion, having come from a jazz background. Latin percussion is kind of like the top of the top in terms of the best rhythm section. So fortunately, Ableton has a whole pack called Latin percussion, but there's a whole lot more that you can do with it. So I'm just going to grab one of those open and show you a bit about that and how you could use some of the sounds in there. It does kind of involve, I would say I would recommend to listen to some of the music that involves Latin percussion, like Cuban music, like son. This has got a lot of interesting sounds like maracas and timbales. These are two of the sounds I really like, particularly timbales. I might just try and grab open one example. I can show you. This is the drum kit I used on a song called Call Me, which I put on my impedance EP years ago. And the timbales really, I thought, brought a lot of life to the sound. And we have so many different hits in the timbales that you have a lot of customization you can do. Like you've got what's called like a double hit or a flam, because we've got da-dung, we've got 2 hits. Or this kind of little mini roll, another longer roll, a beautiful shake. So when we have shakes like this, we can really create like a, I don't know, you can create a lot out of longer sounds like this. So flams like that, and then the lower octave. Oh no, that's just the normal drum kit, sorry. So there's all the things, and I think they're from the Latin percussion pack. So the Latin percussion pack, I think it's with Ableton Suite. Latin percussion here, have a look. Latin percussion pack, highly recommend it. There's a whole lot of stuff in there. And it's been around since Live 8, so if you're using an older version of Ableton, yeah, it should be there. Certainly in the Ableton Live 8 pack as well. So what you can do with these is like create almost melodic drums. I want to turn. This is a faster sound. So immediately I'm just gonna pause. This is my normal drum beat. So it's pretty basic. It's quite busy, but it's still basic. But what I've done is added just a couple of the rolls in the timbales and a roll in, I think, the maracas as well to create a little bit more interest. So I'll just play it so you can hear it. It's also given us a bit of melodic content. So this part of the song is actually a breakdown without the drums, without the synths. So it's just vocals and drums, and that gives us something melodic to hang on to. So timbales, there are a number of other different drums that are melodic, like tabla, which is an Indian drum. So you could use kind of melodic drum to create that. I'm just going to check. And the other thing to really think about is how to include drum fills. And Latin percussion have really, really great drum fills. Like I've got a drum fill, I think. Yeah, so that was just a little fill I created to create a transition in. But for me, like that creates so much more interest because one, the sounds are not sounds you usually hear. They're not so common to hear in electronic music. But they're very high. Usually timbales are a higher pitched drum, just like we hear in like trap music. We have high pitched kind of snares and stuff like that. So really recommend that. I would also say use maracas and shakers more because often I will just create my normal drum beat and then I'll create another layer, which is my percussion layer. And when we have percussion layer, you could create something simple like, I'm just going to grab Latin Fusion kit, for example. So in the Latin Fusion kit, let's just have a listen to what they've got. Is that all you got? Don't like that one. Let's try Latin pop. There's a lot of bongos and stuff, but I was looking for more like maraca sounds, so I might need to go and grab some samples here. Bells, chimes. See, there's beautiful sounds like that. Chimes, great. I'm looking for shakers. So there's some really great shakers, which are caixis, I believe a type of Brazilian shaker. Maybe might be wrong there. But with all these different sounds, you've got a lot of things you can do. I'm going to just stop the preview there. But a lot of things you can do, especially I would say with the long ones. No, that's not what I was expecting. Yeah, effects. So I'm going to grab these two. I'm going to chuck them in here, for example. Can I do that? In here. Bongo and cabasa too. I'm just replacing some bongos. So because they're not necessarily timed specifically to our song, it can create really interesting rhythms. So let's just try, for example, God, I'm going to turn that synthesizer off. I'm going to grab that, and I'm just going to create that as our loop. Cool, and then what we can do is we can create a layer of percussion above that. So I would recommend having these like quite low in the mix, but it does create like a background sound that can add a lot of tension and rhythmic interest to just a simple drum beat. Already, if we just listen to it again, got very simple drum beat. And I think that's more interesting than having just a hi-hat that's going to again, depends on what style of music you're playing, but lots of different things you can add there. So particularly look out, I would say, in the effects ones, like the ones that have long shakes that are not necessarily in time. These are ones you can add really cool things. I'm going to give you an example of how I use this in a song. I'm just going to have to try and find the song, okay? What's it called? Called SF. Where is it? I think this is a song, this is a beat that recently someone bought, so it's a song that I have forgotten about for many, many years, which was interesting when I put it up online, forgot about it for a year, and then someone finally bought it. So just going to play it so you can hear it. Maybe I'm going to get a copyright infringement on myself. Anyway, I'll just stop it there. But I'll put the link in if you want to have a listen to it. Maybe someone's put a rap on it. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But yeah, that was a song I specifically tried to put a lot of like percussion and shakers in, and you can hear it's got this strange kind of rhythm, especially at the start. The other thing that I did with the sound design on the shakers was to add a flanger in, like metallic sounding flanger, which adds like a really interesting, I'd say, metallic sound to those things. So we could just try chucking that on here. For example, I would go audio effect and flanger, and I think it was probably metallic or Texas. Texas is another one, and then I usually just tweak it a little. Yeah, that's the sound I'm looking for. So without the flanger, sounds like a normal shaker. With our flanger, sounds really crazy robotic. And we can bring the dry wet down so it's not as crazy. Even just there at 30, it has that kind of flange, but it doesn't have the full metallic sound. So lots of things you can do with those once you've got the basic rhythm. You can add a whole lot of interesting effects. Even if we chucked a delay on it, I wonder what it would sound like. Now it sounds like there's some kind of metallic bee around us. Yeah, lots of things you can do with those. But yes, there's 3 tips for today. I'm going to finish up here. If there's any questions, let me know. There are a couple of questions I have for you, in fact. You're still there. So some of you are part of the Lost Beat push theory classes. If you've attended one of the theory courses that I do for push, there's a couple of free ones there as well. I'm going to start probably a podcast or another type of live stream, which is discussing and analyzing electronic music. So I kind of need some suggestions for names for a podcast. It will be analyzing electronic music, and I'll be analyzing specifically like harmony in relation to songs in electronic music. So I'll ask for suggestions from the audience, and we'll go through and kind of analyze what's in the song, the arrangement, the theory, the harmony, melody, the structure, etc. So at the moment I don't have an idea for a name. I need a name. So if you have any suggestions for a name, please let me know. And if there's anyone out there who would like to be involved, that would be fantastic, because there's a lot of work involved in creating a podcast. I'm still not sure whether I want to do a podcast or just like this as a live stream that we do together. So please let me know. 1, if you've got a suggestion for a name for a podcast. 2, if you'd like to be involved or you have any suggestions for songs that you want analyzed, let me know. And this is the first time I've done just to Facebook. So let me know if you prefer Facebook or you prefer YouTube and Twitch. For Restream, I cannot do all of them. I mean, I'm not paying for all of them. So it will either be Facebook or YouTube. I think I probably prefer YouTube, but let me know in the comments. So Facebook or YouTube. Okay, I'm going to finish up there. I'll answer any questions if you have on the chat, but thanks for watching and happy producing.